Good morning, welcome, and thank you for joining us this morning as we celebrate Chicago Women in Philanthropy's 40th anniversary. My name is Deborah Walker Johnson, and I serve as co-chair of CWIP's Board of Directors, and I am president of the Forest Preserve Foundation.
And I'm Jackie Davidoff, co-chair with Deborah of the CWIP board and principal of Davidoff Strategy. We are so delighted that you are here, along with over 200 colleagues in the social sector and business sector. And we are here together to lift up and honor the voices and values of these remarkable women that we're honoring today. These are women who have made a significant difference in the lives of women and girls, especially of color, in our city. So what is CWIP about? This organization, Deborah, our board and members, means so much to me. And I hope by the end of this program that you feel inspired toward the same vision. For over 40 years, we have supported women through programs, mentoring, leadership development, and creating intimate, real spaces for women together toward becoming change agents in their organizations and communities. We work to build an equitable, inclusive, and connected social sector. And core to our work is that our all-volunteer board and members have taken on the work of racial equity. Deborah and I are proud of this and our ongoing work, which is a part of what this program is about today. So what do we want for you today? We want you to leave and take from this courageous action and see yourselves as change agents in whatever sphere you operate in. This has been a year that has shown us more than ever that we are called to be more and do more to bridge these divides. So recognizing these gaps, CWIP established its Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee back in 2016. And I want to tell you that while Deborah and I have had a long history with CWIP, each of us, for me, it is through CWIP's racial equity and social justice work that I have been most impacted and grown the most, personally and professionally. I have really taken on my own sense of self-assessment and commitment and responsibility around addressing racism. And really, from our experiences, hundreds of women have found in CWIP a place to actively participate in discussions, programs, and intimate conversations they say they have not had a place to do anywhere else. Women, all genders, men are so hungry for this. So I hope you're invited into these conversations as well. And I also want to acknowledge CWIP's longstanding Women's Leadership Mentoring Program that provides support and professional development for emerging and mid-year career practitioners in the nonprofit sector, our networking and professional development opportunities for members, and our Girls Committee, our newest committee, which extends mentorship into the community. In fact, with their last activity, we hosted a walking tour for sixth grade girls on the South Side to learn about the contributions that Black women have made in Chicago throughout history. And this year we started our Friday shares for women to come together during the pandemic, because so much of CWIP is about community. And you'll hear more about that and have an opportunity to participate tomorrow to discuss this panel. So with that, Deborah, gonna hand it back to you.
Thanks, Jackie. So before we get started, I want to take this opportunity to thank our sponsors. Chicago Women in Philanthropy is a charitable volunteer organization, and we have only one major fundraising event each year. Support from all of our sponsors here today is critical to providing the excellent year-round program content, mentoring, and networking opportunities that CWIP is known for. So thank you to our event sponsors. We also want to acknowledge and give special thanks to our leadership sponsor, Davidoff Strategy. as well as our visionary sponsors, Allstate, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, Comcast NBC Universal, Quarles and Brady, and Crown Family Philanthropies. A list of our sponsors is on the screen, and you can also find them on CWIP's website. Thank you again to all of our sponsors for your tremendous support. Now we've got a great program for you today. I am so excited about this year's Making a Difference honoree. As our board members discuss who we wanted to honor this year, Dr. Ngozi Ezike's name flew to the top immediately. She serves as the director of the Illinois Department of Public Health. And if you're like me, I was at my TV every day at 2:30 during the shutdown to hear her COVID briefings. And I can't wait to hear what she has to say today. And if that's not enough, in true CWIP fashion, we have gathered a live panel of accomplished women who will share their insights on how we can move forward together towards making Chicago more equitable for women. WBEZ reporter Natalie Moore will facilitate this lively discussion with our panelists. This is an exciting year for CWIP. This event marks the beginning of our 40th anniversary celebrations. What began as a brown bag lunch program 40 years ago to give a handful of women involved in philanthropy an opportunity to network and collaborate has evolved to more than 300 members from across the nonprofit and philanthropic sector, all working together to improve the lives of women and girls. Now that's a reason to celebrate. We've got a lot of activities planned to mark this momentous occasion. Throughout the year, we will honor 40 trailblazing women who have made their mark in the philanthropic sector for women and girls. Be sure to keep an eye out for our messages and watch our website regularly to see who we're honoring next. But to kick things off, we want to introduce you to our first trailblazing woman, CWIP's co-founder, Iris Krieg from Iris Krieg and Associates. Iris began her career in philanthropy in the 1970s when most staff were men. Seeing that women issues were not being taken seriously in both fundraising and in the nonprofit world, it served as her motivation to start Chicago Women Philanthropy in 1981 with Joy Beaton. Iris, thank you so much for that boss move. So many women have benefited from your vision. So right now, we'll hear from Iris as she shares her insights on how CWIP, the philanthropic sector, and our communities as a whole has evolved over the 40 years. Iris' remarks will be followed by a video slideshow that highlights the meaningful connections and programs CWIP has provided over the year. So on behalf of the Board of Directors and our members, thank you again for being a part of our celebration today, and enjoy the program.
I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you, Chicago Women in Philanthropy, for inviting me to join you on this very special day and recognizing me as one of the founders of this wonderful organization. CWIP has always held a special place in my heart. When I joined co-founder Joy Beaton to create Chicago Women in Philanthropy 40 years ago, there were few women working for foundations. And so we began meeting over sandwiches with a few women colleagues at our then workplace home, the Chicago Community Trust. We had energy, we had enthusiasm, and we began to feel the power of working together. It was glorious. Our idea took hold, not only to support each other, but also to focus more funding interest on programs meeting the needs of women and girls. Progress is possible. If I tell you what the world was like then, you would be aghast. Just take a peep with me into the time of 40 years ago. Think about domestic violence, for instance. Not everyone believed it was a bad thing, and certainly not something for public discussion. The same for good paying jobs, like in the trades. Should these really be accessible to women? Maybe women weren't suited to these jobs and these jobs weren't suitable for women. Today, we can say not all the battles have been won, but we do know that these positions are unacceptable, and certainly we have made progress in these areas. And this speaks to why CWIP is still important today and why it has succeeded over 40 years. First, it has stayed true to its values to support women in philanthropy and continue to press philanthropy to address the needs of women and girls. Secondly, it has adapted to the times. When we started CWIP, we needed a space for women who worked on the funding side to meet and develop their own presence and their own power in the field. This has largely been achieved, and so when several years ago, CWIP decided to recognize the partnership between funders and organizations by including women from organizations, well, it was an adaptation to what was needed then, and as it turns out, what is needed today. As I look at the programming, I can see CWIP is offering a range that addresses what you, its constituency, wants. Something else I want to say about Chicago Women in Philanthropy, and another reason for its success, is that it is so welcoming as an organization. CWIP wants you to be a part of in whatever way you can. I always ask my new staff to join and participate. CWIP offers great opportunity to learn not only about our sector, but to enhance your leadership skills, how to plan meetings, how to bring people in, how to share ideas, how to listen to others. I am so pleased also that men feel welcome. We need to learn and to act together. So I'm proud of where CWIP has come. There is no doubt in my mind that our sector in Chicago has advanced as it has for both women who are employed in it and women who live in our community because of CWIP. I am honored to be a part of this celebration and honored to share today with your illustrious speaker, Dr. Ngozi Ezike, and your exciting panel. Thank you so much. Happy anniversary, Chicago Women in Philanthropy.
And I am currently in the WLMP program through CWIP. I just wanted to say what an incredible experience this has been. They've done such an amazing job matching me with my mentor, who has taught me so much throughout the past several months. And we've had a chance to really bond and discuss both our professional and our personal lives. I look at my mentor and she is who I want to be in my career, in my future. Thank you so much, CWIP, for this amazing opportunity to be part of this program and to be a mentee. And I hope that someday I can be as good of a mentor as my mentor currently is. Thanks.
morning, everyone. Each year, CWIP presents its Making a Difference Award to a Chicago area woman who has made a significant impact in the field of philanthropy. Philanthropy is all about compassion, giving, humanity, and generosity, and no one has given more of themselves over the past year and a half than this year's recipient. We are delighted to honor Dr. Ezike with the 2021 Making a Difference Award for her strong and steady leadership and exceptional response during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as her continued efforts on the front lines to help keep everyone safe. Because of her tireless leadership and strong work ethic, she has shown us what it really means to make a difference in our lives and in the lives of our families and friends.
Speaking of friends, we are thrilled to have Dr. Una Osili, Dr. Ezike's close friend, here with us to help introduce and learn more about her. Dr. Osili is the Efroymson Chair in Philanthropy and the Associate Dean for Research and International Programs at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, the world's first school dedicated to the study of philanthropy. She also serves as a Dean's Fellow for the Mays Family Institute on Diverse Philanthropy. Dr. Osili and Ezike have known each other for many years. They met as roommates in college and have remained close friends ever since. And although, as referenced earlier, many of us feel as if we already know Dr. Ezike from her constant presence in our lives over the past year, I know there is so much more to learn about her. And thanks to Dr. Osili and her history and friendship, we will all get to know her a little better this morning as well. Please join me in welcome Dr. Una Osili.
Today, we celebrate all of you. You have worked tirelessly over the past year to meet the challenges of our time. As we seek to rebuild following a devastating global pandemic and a national reckoning on racial justice, we can draw inspiration from individuals of all backgrounds who have given generously to tackle the challenges of our time. Philanthropy, defined as voluntary action for the public good, is a core value, a central way for Americans to contribute to the vitality and strength of their communities in times of prosperity and also during moments of crisis and adversity. In 2019, the last year for which data is available, Americans donated about $450 billion to charitable organizations. Of that $450 billion, 69%, the majority, came from individuals. But giving is broader than monetary donations. In the past year, we've seen the importance of time, of talent, of treasure, and testimony, using one's voice to speak out. The pandemic has exposed harsh racial, social, and economic disparities and glaring imbalances in the social safety net. We've also seen a surge of giving to tackle racial and social justice. Today, funders and nonprofits, all of you in the audience, have a unique opportunity to listen and engage with communities as we all serve and strengthen equity and inclusion. But let's also remember that the task ahead will include a new approach to leadership. We need leaders today who will reach back to empower others. We need desperately to inspire the next generation of young leaders. This morning, we have the honor of hearing from one of our nation's foremost healthcare leaders, Dr. Ngozi Ezike, a national hero right here in Chicago. I have known Dr. Ngozi Ezike for almost 3 decades. She is my sister, my friend, my college roommate, and also one of our nation's most trusted voices as we tackle the unprecedented public health crisis of our time. I was fortunate to meet Ngozi during my first week at Harvard in 1990. We bonded instantly over our shared values, our Nigerian heritage, our love for family, and our commitment to service. We've been there for each other through graduate school, weddings, baby showers, and now raising teenagers and high school graduations. During the most turbulent times of the past year, our family and countless other families throughout this nation have been fortunate to have Ngozi's steady and trusted leadership. The pandemic cast a light on Dr. Ezike and her extraordinary qualities, her integrity, her authenticity, and her ability to build community wherever she goes. I can tell you that Ngozi was destined to be a doctor with a difference from a young age. Her father, an immigrant from Nigeria who settled in Los Angeles, had big dreams for his first daughter. He dreamed that she would be a physician, but everyone who knew her recognized that she would always serve with excellence in whatever role she played. From an early age, Dr. Ezike had a passion and a gift for lifting up the needs of others and for reaching people of all different backgrounds. Throughout high school and college, Ngozi made early investments that would yield significant dividends. She was already endowed with so many talents, but she invested in those talents. She excelled in languages, and so she studied Spanish and French and Portuguese and Swahili, determined that one day this would allow her to connect with patients of all cultures, of all traditions, and of all backgrounds. She was also an outstanding high school and college athlete, playing varsity volleyball, track, and varsity crew, 3 sports. In all of these sports, she's been an advocate for maintaining work-life balance, particularly in challenging times. And she's continually reminded all of her friends to make time for exercise, for annual checkups, and to set aside time for reflection and renewal. After graduating with honors from Harvard University with a concentration in chemistry, Ngozi moved back to California and attended medical school at the University of California, San Diego. She then completed her residency at Rush Medical School in the Chicago area and chose to specialize not just in one specialty, but in 2, primary care and pediatrics. She wanted to help and take care of both children and adults. Throughout the years, my friendship and sisterhood with Ngozi has grown. I have admired her extraordinary approach to leading and to leadership. It has been inspiring to see how she brings all of her facets and roles to the work she does. A public health leader, a physician, a mother, a sister, a friend, and a woman of faith. All of this she wears with grace as she leads Illinois and the country through this crisis to serve the communities around her. Dr. Ezike has also been a source of hope and optimism through these most uncertain times, reminding all of us that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and that we will all need to work together to support our most vulnerable. She has met the overwhelming responsibilities of her leadership roles with courage and grace. And she's also built community by conducting her daily coronavirus medical briefings in both English and Spanish. Dr. Ezike's passion and commitment to underserved populations has been part of her career from the very beginning. She served as the medical director at the Cook County Juvenile Detention Center for more than 15 years, promoting dignity and respect, regardless of a patient's ability to pay. In her work, Dr. Ezike has demonstrated philanthropic leadership. She has used her time, her talents, her treasure, and her testimony, her voice, to speak out against injustice, to center on equity and inclusion, and to lift up the most vulnerable amongst us and to support those in need. Through her example and work, Dr. Ezike reminds all of us to continue to create opportunities for the next generation. Dr. Ezike is an exemplar for philanthropic leadership. And with that, I'd like to turn the mic over to my college roommate, my sister, and my friend, Dr. Ngozi Ezike.
Una, I don't even know how to thank you for that kind introduction. I didn't mean for you to have to create a whole project. And you are always so amazing. So thank you, and I love you, Una Buna. That's my nickname for her. So 2 CWIP's board co-chairs, Jackie Davidoff and Deborah Walker Johnson, to the entire board of directors, to all the members and guests at this special occasion, greetings and good morning. I am so delighted to be a part of your 40th anniversary celebration. Thank you so much for bestowing upon me the Making a Difference Award. I am so humbled to receive this honor. And the theme for your event, Forward Together, is simply pitch perfect. Forward Together could literally serve as the most succinctly worded vision statement one could come up with for the Illinois Department of Public Health in general, and is absolutely spot on for this COVID journey that we have weathered together. The Illinois Department of Public Health, established nearly 150 years ago, is an amazing agency that I'm so proud and humbled to serve as the director of. Yes, I'm the first Black woman and only the second woman ever to lead this agency. And what I hope to see, and what I know that CWIP strives for as well, is that we will continue nurturing, developing, and supporting women and girls so that we can get some cleared headspace between women leaders and what I term FNOs, the firsts and the only. We all look forward with anticipation to the time when it's no longer breaking news to have women in any seat of position of authority and influence. Can I get an amen for that? I have thousands of letters right now at my Springfield office, at my Chicago office, that are direct and clear about what it meant and what it means to see me at the podium with Governor J.B. Pritzker, especially during those COVID press conferences. Frankly, the majority of these beautifully handwritten notes and cards are from women and from people of color who say that the representation truly matters. And in many instances that they use me as an example for their children and their grandchildren or their students. Well, that's something that I'm so proud of. And understandably, it's quite weighty. I have tried to give everything I can to be as successful as possible in this role as director of the Illinois Department of Public Health. It's really the biggest stretch that I've ever leaned into. And I was able to make the leap because I was enveloped, cocooned, if you will, if I can coin a term, cocooned by nurturing friends and mentors, both women and women allies, also affectionately known as men, who know what I'm made of and who know what more I'm capable of, and supported me taking on this very important role. And one of those friends, one of those peer mentors, is Professor Dr. Osili, who you just heard from, my dear, dear sister, which is just making this morning even more surreal. And no, I'm not going to tear up. I think my eyeballs are sweating. But I was, as I was saying, that bubble of support is always essential. And you have to have people that are in your corner and that are continually supporting you to do more, even more than sometimes you give yourself credit that you might be able to do. I don't think, to be clear, I don't think that they knew what was around the corner for me when we discussed this role. And so definitely it wasn't part of the plan to set me up to lead the 6th largest state in the country through a global pandemic. But with education, hard work, the support and the support network, and I've got to add faith and God to that recipe, then the impossible, in fact, becomes possible. And that's exactly what every young girl and every woman needs to know. Do the right thing even when you think that no one is watching. That's what I tell each of my 4 children, and that's how I have tried to live my life. Not seeking out accolades or recognition, but doing the right thing, helping individuals. As a physician, I have been able to work with individuals and total families, sometimes at the same time, being blessed to be able to take care of adults and children, with the goal of helping them understand their health condition and then work together to identify appropriate ways to optimize health. I have been and continue to be an ardent supporter of those who most need support. I intentionally took my first job at Cook County Health because I wanted to give loving, respectful medical care to populations that have traditionally been marginalized, populations that are economically disadvantaged, Black people, immigrants. And so I spent 15 years working in all branches of that health system. I was blessed to work at Stroger Hospital, the former Cook County Hospital, on the pediatric floor, in the newborn nursery, on the adult inpatient units. I worked in the health school-based teen clinics, outpatient clinics on the west side, the south side, and the suburbs. And then finally at the Cook County Jail and the Cook County Detention Center. I was just minding my own business, doing this personally fulfilling work when the opportunity for the Illinois Department of Public Health arose. So I have to expressly thank Governor J.B. Pritzker for being a staunch equity champion himself. He gave me this unique opportunity. And when I say unique, I just think, as a public health doc, there's so much data and stats. Here's one stat that continually blows my mind when I think about the opportunity that I have had. There are approximately 1 million doctors in the United States, and there are currently only 50 of them that have the honor of serving as their state's director of public health. And so as this door was opened to me, countless numbers of women and people of color can see a reflection of themselves that they had never actually seen before. And we all know the unbridled raw power therein. So I'm so happy to serve, but more importantly, I'm happy to be mentoring young women and holding the door wide open so that others can enter in as well. So as we look over this last year, there are so many phenomenal women to salute, so many phenomenal women to celebrate who have done upfront work and also critical behind the scenes work to get us through this COVID journey. We know and are grateful for organizations like CWIP that have supported community organizations that have been that safety net for so many Chicagoans during this pandemic crisis. I also have to soberly acknowledge all of the sheroes for whom we mourn, incredible women whose lives were cut short by COVID. May their souls rest in peace and their memories be a blessing. And to you, CWIP, on the occasion of your 40th anniversary, I urge you to move forward together, not just as this year's theme, but year after year after year, supporting the infrastructure and the networks that will uplift women and girls to ensure no one is left behind as we all power forward together. And as I have been known to do a time or two, I'll now summarize my remarks in Spanish. I'm just kidding. But for Ms. Jackie, who studied and mastered French at the Sorbonne, I conclude with, Je voudrais vous remercier pour l'honneur spécial aujourd'hui. Pour toujours, je serai votre partenaire dans l'avancement de l'inclusion et de la connexion équitable pour les femmes et les filles. For those of us who don't speak French, thank you for the special honor you've given me today. I am so excited to receive this Making a Difference Award, and please know that I will forever be a partner in the advancement of the equity, inclusion, and connection for all women and girls. Blessings, and thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Osili, Dr. Ezike, for that inspiring display of friendship and sisterhood and impact. Truly, truly incredible. It blows my mind just to think of how far we have come in this year, in this battle against COVID-19, and just how far we need to go. This discussion, these remarks, have rightfully reminded us that the pandemic, that gender inequity are still present. And these challenges have presented an opportunity for us as a society, and certainly as women in philanthropy, to reflect on gender, on racial disparities, which have been laid bare and also exacerbated over the past year. It is our responsibility to take concrete steps to make our sector, our workplaces, and our communities more equitable. We will explore these issues and opportunities next in our Envisioning an Equitable Chicago panel, which will be moderated by the amazing Natalie Moore. Natalie is a race, class, and communities reporter for WBEZ, Chicago's NPR station. Natalie also writes a monthly column for the Chicago Sun-Times. She is an award-winning journalist whose work has been broadcast and published in outlets throughout the country and the world. Natalie is the author of The South Side, A Portrait of Chicago and American Segregation, which is the winner of the Chicago Book Review of Books Award for nonfiction and a BuzzFeed Best Nonfiction Book in 2016. Most recently, Natalie was named as a 2021 USA Fellow in recognition of her role as one of the artists and storytellers shaping our world today. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator and my friend, Natalie Moore.
Thank you, my friend Tava, for such a gracious introduction. Thank you for having me, and I am excited to delve into this panel. It's a tough act to follow, but we hope to be inspiring and solution-oriented also. So first, let me introduce our panelists. We have Adrienne Alexander, who is Director of Intergovernmental Affairs for AFSCME Council 31, a statewide public sector union. Barbara Burgess is COO and Chief Vision Realization Officer at the Wright Foundation for the Realization of Human Potential, whose focus is on supporting leaders in learning the core social emotional intelligence skills they need to make a difference wherever they are. Wendy Chan is a consultant working at the intersection of emergency preparedness and worker health. She is currently the Special Projects Consultant for OAI, Inc., overseeing a national COVID-19 safety and vaccine education initiative funded by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. And Sharita Ellens, is the president and CEO of Women Employed, a native Chicagoan and longtime advocate for Chicago women, youth, and families. Sharita believes that her purpose is to use her time, talent, and treasure helping the most marginalized gain self-sufficiency and full agency of their lives. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I first want to ask a very straightforward question. What do women need right now, whether they are frontline workers or in philanthropy?
So if you don't mind, I'll kick this off for us. Okay, and so just to ground us in some of the data, because I don't want to assume everyone knows the numbers, but since February 2020, nearly 2 million women have left the workforce. So after more than a year of pandemic-related job loss, we know 4 out of 10 women in the U.S. have either stopped working or cut back their hours altogether because of COVID. And National Women's Law Center reported that women would need more than two years, so 28 straight months of job gains at April's, so based on the April's job report and that level of growth. So if we base it off of that, they would need 28 months to recover the over 4.5 million net jobs that have been lost since February of 2020. So we also know, and as we've been talking today about gender and racial inequity, some of the women that are going to be returning to work, they're going to be forced to take jobs that are lower pay and lower quality. And that's one of the other concerns that we have. So for women that are facing, financial insecurity due to the pandemic, it's more difficult for them to even afford the education and the training that they're going to need to switch industries, because a lot of our industries have been decimated. So we really need to take bold steps and be really creative and innovative and make those investments in education and workforce development and student debt relief. We need policy solutions that are going to allow people to care for their families and manage working at the same time. That's going to be, a very robust care infrastructure and strong workplace protections. And I can go on and on, because there are a lot of things that I think that we need, and we're in such an opportunity where we have the leverage to make the change. And, I just want to make sure that we are all committed and passionate and steadfast in making those changes.
And Chair, I'd love to add on to that. I think even to what you're speaking to really know the sobering reality of what we're facing. And, from my perspective also, there's a whole opportunity. It's both the challenge and the opportunity for us right now, but there's to me, really realizing that the model that we have been orienting to, I think it's been a beautiful wake-up call to say it really never worked anyway.
Right.
And that we really have this opportunity to create a new game. And I love what you're saying, because there are so many concrete things we need to do. But to me, there's also, in addition to that, this figure ground shift of what this model is. And I think Dr. Ezike was demonstrated beautifully in a bold way without that model existing out there, and has paved the way. But, our world is out of balance. We have overvalued traditionally masculine values, I'll say, and we've undervalued traditionally feminine values. And to really be aware of that and to really ask ourselves, is this the game we want to play? Part of the challenge of getting ourselves back in there is a structure and system that never really worked before. And if we can learn to really honor, kind of this combination of things. So can we honor the things like competition, but pair them with cooperation? Can we honor the quantity, but pair it with quality? And within ourselves, I know for me particularly, it wasn't something I was raised to honor whatsoever. And for me and the women that we're serving and contributing to really trust our own experiences, trust our own values, and boldly act regardless of the permission or the structure of the system that's in front of us. Because in order for those concrete things to change, we have a unique opportunity, and it's an internal journey as much as an external one. Just even with what was shared, we need to be together, to be supporting each other in the face of something that looks like it's not going to be supportive of that at all, and to be bold in making those moves. We have these challenges, but it's time to step up and take responsibility and take the risks.
We know the system wasn't working. We know that those stats are not a surprise to women this past year. I would love for each of you to be bold and tell me a policy, whether it's federal or on the state level, or even if it's something that your job does. What is something that is tangible that you would like to see changed?
So I'll speak up. For me, working for a union, I think unionization is a big thing, and making it easier for folks to unionize would make huge gains for people in terms of equalizing gender discrimination, racial discrimination in the workplace, giving folks, no matter what their position in the job, a voice and power in the job is huge. And also, I have young kids, a 4-year-old and a 10-month-old. So childcare help is also a big thing too.
And just to quickly follow up, when you say childcare, do you mean subsidies? Do you mean daycare at work?
All the things. I mean, it's childcare workers need to be paid more themselves. There needs to be more subsidies for childcare, more access. I think Chicago has been good about increasing pre-K availability at school, but for 3-year-olds, it's half day most of the time. That's not really an option for a lot of folks, but making that structure kind of before folks get into the public school system or whatever school system is so important to making sure that folks have like really reducing the gaps that exist from the minute kids walk into schools.
And if I can add on the flip side of that, for the childcare workforce, we know that we have a teacher shortage here in Illinois. We know that with the, especially in Chicago, with the call for more universal pre-K, that we have a shortage in early childhood, but we also know that we have a risk in creating a more racial gap in who those childcare providers are and who those educators are, because they lack the access to be able to get those credentials that they need. And there was proposed legislation to be able to have community colleges offer a baccalaureate degree for early childhood, which was voted down. And so now there is a commission that has been formed and that was just passed with the recent session that will look at the equity issues. So one of the things that we need to do is make sure that we're aware of all of the policies that are at play. There are policies that are, at play around paid time off, paid sick days, paid family leave. All of those things are essential for, working parents, but definitely working women. And so we want to make sure that we're aware of that. The mayor just released proposed an ordinance last week that will allow domestic workers to be able to set up contracts or enforce contracts with their workers and raise their minimum wage to $15 an hour this year. Those are critical. And when we start talking about closing the wage gap and closing those equity gaps, those policies, eliminating the sub-minimum wage, all of those policies are essential. And if we're serious about closing both the racial and gender equity gap at the same time, we have to be vigilant about those policies, and we have to know that they're happening, and we have to be very vocal in our support of them. I apologize for my tangent, Natalie.
Not a tangent at all. Wendy,
yeah,
what about you?
Yeah, I just want to second what everyone else said, but I really am a big proponent of greater funding towards workforce education, workforce development, because I think that there's a lot of, we need to bring people, uplift people into to transition into jobs that they can, use their previous skills and move into newer jobs. I also would like for employers actually to look at their own policies and to have the sort of compassion that we asked of them for during the pandemic, and sort of in the post-pandemic, or as we emerge out of the pandemic, to really think about our policies as employers and the flexibility, and to not be punitive, and to look for creative ways to work with our workers so that they can have a very productive and also, a very stable livelihood.
And I'm at this point a lot of dittos, particularly on, I'd say, the issues of minimum wage and workforce as well. And just to speak to what you were saying, Wendy, a sense for all organizations, for companies to really be looking at flexibility. And again, I'll go back to the policy never worked before. Who are we kidding? For women or men or anyone of any gender. It just is a structure that is not really healthy and supportive of us as contributing individuals and raising humanity. And to not have COVID be an exception where we get flexible about things, but to have it be a marker and invitation for new ways, and really to invite everyone to the table to think outside the box of how it can be. And that can look in a lot of different ways, whether it's from job fair, job shares, or flexibility, or work schedule shifting. There's just so many opportunities. And so I think both at the policy level, but also, organization by organization.
For women who have yet to return to the office, what should they expect when they go back, and what should they be demanding?
Well, I want to say that I think that it's important that we don't get too far in terms of the individualistic mindset. It's a balance, right? Because we still want to be connected and collaborative. And I think you have to do extra work in a virtual setting to maintain that. And I think I know like my own leadership style, and I feel like a lot of women, I've heard this from a lot of women, is about collaboration and working together, and we thrive in that environment. So I know one thing that I've been thinking about and kind of struggling with is I like the ability to pick up my daughter from school every day. But I also know that the team effort just isn't the same over the phone or hopping on a Zoom. So I think back to what Barbara said and Wendy too, is like we have to think creatively about what we want the workplace to look like. What if we're doing 2 days a week in the office? What do those 2 days look like? Can we structure it in a way that there's more built-in collaboration and less of an individualistic focus?
Yeah, if I can add on to that, I think that's perfect. And I think that, with what Barbara was speaking about earlier at the top of the discussion about using our power and using our voice. And if we use it collectively, we will be able to leverage this moment. There are so many articles and stories out there right now about the labor shortage and about how employers are increasing wages because they know that it's a competitive market. And in those moments is when you have your best opportunity to, create that change. And I would use this as a catalyst for that change. And yes, know exactly what you need and be able to speak up for that. Know when the conversations are happening in the workplace, those surveys that they send around and they're asking your opinion, give it, and use this as an opportunity to really help shape what it is, because employers haven't figured it out. They're trying to figure it out. So when we're in this moment of trying to figure out, make sure that your voice is at the table in some way, shape, or form to make sure that you are, getting your point across. And the other part of that is that we really have to be, in my opinion, very empathetic, and we really should be focused on making sure that we're raising the floor as much as we're focused on crashing the ceiling. Like when we can raise up everyone, we're all going to benefit, and we all have to care enough to make sure that we're speaking for those that are most marginalized.
I want to add to that and just say that when we return back to work, women and society in general should expect women to have more opportunities in leadership roles in their industry. I mean, we have seen through the pandemic that women who were given roles as leaders ended up being at the forefront of their industry and the best hope for ending this pandemic. So we have like Dr. Kizmia Corbett, who led the team that developed the Moderna vaccine, Dr. Özlem Türeci, who developed the mRNA platform, who, for decades, her research had been repeatedly sidelined, but she continued to pursue it with rigor. And, she's now the head of BioNTech. There's Oxford's Sarah Gilbert's team who developed AstraZeneca. So I could go on and on. Nita Patel, who her literally all women science team developed the Novavax vaccine, which will probably be, maybe one of the next vaccines seeking EUA. And so when I think about how many lives these women have and are saving with these vaccines, I can't help but ponder what major discoveries and what breakthroughs in medicine and treatments have we missed out on in previous decades because we left women out of leadership roles? And I think, we should really expect that when we return to work.
Adrienne, I want to go back to something that you mentioned, individualism, and that is such a big part of American culture. How do women work together better, and how can they advocate for each other when it's often against the norm of the dominant culture?
Yeah, I was actually going to tie that to what was last said, because we have in our union a lot of folks that have worked throughout the pandemic. And I think it's been really just powerful to see how folks have come together. And there's been a lot of new union organizing throughout the pandemic because people found out that their employers actually didn't have their best interests at heart. So I think that there is just so much power in coming together and realizing, the connectedness of each other and what you can together work to achieve. And just that action of working together, of coming together, helps people realize their own individual power as well. And that's really what unions are about. And I think that I feel like where I sit, working for a public sector union, it's just really powerful to see there amongst our locals, just so many middle-aged Black women, despite not having college degrees or no matter what their title is at work, be it an admin, a clerk, an epidemiologist or a librarian or a lawyer, they all have a place in leadership. So I really think that only through coming together can you see that type of power across broad sectors.
I just wanted to add on to what Wendy was saying and what Adrienne, what you're building on. The book Transformational Leadership by Bernard Bass and Ron Riggio. Bernard Bass was a futurist and would predict trends 30 years in advance. And his prediction for 2030, and he's long since passed, was that women would be running the majority of organizations. And it had nothing to do with these current movements. It was because the research and statistics showed that they had analyzed the particular gifts that are there. And I believe it's true in diversity as well. And what would be needed for our world, for the complex situations that we face, for the changing dynamics, for all the different pieces, that it was just sort of a logical outcome that women would be more at the helm of those things. And I think to both of what you're speaking about, there's a seed change needed, and what's possible out of that if we move ourselves away from sort of the old model and really step into that prediction.
I think sort of going back to this dichotomy of individualism versus, I guess, our desire to work collaboratively with other women. And I think I feel like there's something deeper that's going on when we're talking about American individualism and about human nature, when we put into play what happened with the pandemic. So, how do we work together better when during the pandemic, our primitive brains took over and we became self-preservationists? Our brains are a bit hardwired when confronted with danger to automatically react with fight, flight, or freeze. So, danger has maybe triggered us to distrust and stay away from people who aren't in our usual quote unquote in groups. So, and which is, which might be helpful when you want to prevent the spread of disease, that people are like, naturally staying away from each other. But I think we need to all check ourselves for a moment as we emerge out of this pandemic. Do I have the symptoms of distrust? Has being in self-preservation mode made me biased against others, or am I now more prone to my biases, and how do I rise above them? Is this affecting how I work with others around me? How do we make sure to cultivate an inclusive and empathic workplace where everyone feels safe, respected, appreciated, provided opportunities, and are listened to? I believe this is sort of, this sort of soul searching is a good starting point for me, at least, as we emerge out of the pandemic. And it's a good foundation that helps me think about how to pave a way for a more equitable society. and how to work with other women to build a more equitable society. If we could reflect on our own personal state of mind and heart and see how we can sort of move ourselves truly more towards, an openness and a collectiveness towards, a more enjoyable shared existence with each other. I think that's something that's been on my mind too.
Wendy, if you don't mind me asking you this, in this soul searching, did you realize anything about yourself over these past 14 months?
Yes. I mean, when I think about it, I realize how with this sort of primitive brain, natural, like automatic fight, flight, or freeze, I can sort of look back and think, what times where I was fighting versus, fleeing versus freezing, and how it also even, became part of my body, almost the tension and things like that. And, as I, as the economy and as things are opening up, I have to really take myself out of that mode and, be that person that, is trying to embrace everyone, in my mind first, and then as I approach them. I mean, it's also without, when we had our masks on, it was also difficult to gauge. Our mirror neurons weren't working like they were before, which really triggers our empathic selves, so I think it's something to think about, how we emerge out of this, ourselves, and then become, as someone mentioned here, vulnerable for ourselves and for other people. Yeah.
Self-care is a buzzword, although I think it tends to skew middle to upper middle class with brunch and mimosas and spa treatments. And have you re-envisioned what self-care is or what it could or should be?
I'll speak to that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Barbara.
I think in a similar way, the definition was never helpful. And just to what you were speaking to, Natalie, it's that, and it's spas, and it's all these things, which really is very incredibly limiting and not what we need most of the time. And to me, a big component, and I think, Wendy, you were just reflecting that, but being in touch with our emotions and our feelings and giving ourselves permission to act on those is incredibly important self-care that doesn't wait for the money or the time or any of those things that, frankly, most of us, wouldn't have the luxury or opportunity to do because we're too busy trying to get stuff done in the world. And but to honor our experience. So, and I look at, particularly with women in anger, to honor that they're, that experience of anger. We can choose that we're going to be responsible with how we respond about it, but to allow it and to tap it and to let it be present. Same thing, with hurt or our upset or our sadness or our feelings. Those are incredible pieces of data being communicated to us moment by moment that tell us right action. But so many of us have been trained, and I know for me, just coming up in corporations, that my feelings were a problem. They got in the way, and they got in the way of decision making. And now the research is really demonstrating it's the total opposite. We cannot make decisions without our feelings. And I think this goes back to what would be possible if we had valued and honored these things. Who knows what we could solve and act into, but to really let self-care be me taking a stand for me and what matters for me honoring that experience that I have, regardless of what everybody else around me is saying. That is self-care, and doesn't need to wait for a spa or something ridiculous. And then, as was modeled earlier, to surround myself with support that's going to say, yes, I understand. They all spit in your face when you said that, and you go, you keep going. I got your back. That's what self-care is to me.
I first want to say, Wendy, I am inspired about your journey of self-awareness. And I think giving yourself the time and the space to take that journey is a version of self-care as well. And at the beginning of the pandemic, when we were all in shutdown mode, I started listening to this podcast, Girl Track. And Girl Track is created by African American women for African American women for the purposes of self-care, to have a space where we can honestly talk about and share with one another the burden that we carry of guilt, of being able to have time for self-care. There's that, Natalie, you talked about it earlier, there's this privilege that sits out there, and it makes us believe that we can't take the time to care for ourselves. And the way that they talked about self-care was in a form, think of it as a form of radical activism, for yourself. And because if you're not doing what you need for you, then you're not going to be at your best self to do what you need to do for others. And we're in this moment in time, and I do think that it's tied to the fact that we have better representation of women in critical positions and in roles of influence, that we have more women speaking out and being authentic about their need for self-care, about their need to protect their peace and their mental health, about their need to be able to have feelings in the workplace or emotions or whatever the case may be. And I don't think that we would be in this moment had not all of everything that has happened in this last year. I don't think that we would be in this space, and even to have the honest dialogue of how self-care has traditionally been a privilege for a few, and not something that we can all participate in. So I'm glad that those things are changing, and I've been trying to pay more attention to my self-care during this pandemic, but I have a long journey to go, right? Because it's just something that has been ingrained. I have to have my own mind shift around this, and I'm working on it. So I may have to come talk to Wendy.
Right. Looking forward to it. I think for me, I don't know how you guys all feel about this, but I think the crisis has really affected my perspective and on boundary setting. For example, saying yes to back-to-back Zoom meetings. How many of you guys have done that? And I think it really can affect our mental well-being. And I just think there's a lot of pressure. There was a lot of pressure during the pandemic to perform and to sometimes unnecessarily prove ourselves. So I think it's important to really listen to ourselves and to look for signs and symptoms of fatigue or being overworked, and to figure out ways to be true to ourselves. And so we don't feel like we're doing things that cause harm to our mental well-being. And I was just so inspired, I think, by, Naomi Osaka's stance this past week. And, that was a very good example of not just authenticity and sincerity, but, of self-care and setting boundaries. And I think, we can learn a lot from that.
My default mode is type A hyper. So I wanted to, at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone's like, I'm learning how to make sourdough and I'm learning how to do this crafty thing. And that's kind of my default too. And the pandemic has been good for me in the sense that I was like, no, I'm not planning anything, because I was also like, let me have activities for the girls, but I just hard stop, emergency break on all of that, and have really been trying to embrace being in the moment with the kids and not rushing to get you out the door to go to the museum, but instead playing with you and your show that you want to do, or making time in my day. I pick up my daughter every day now. That is what I do. I build my schedule around that so I can be there, so I can ask her, how her day was, and I listen, and I'm not trying to rush back to this. So that for me has been a complete shift, and it's been really good for my family. And we made it work before, and it was crazy sometimes, but this is this is better. And so, we talked about like, what are we going back to? It's something that I've been thinking about a lot. Like, how do I hold on to these things even as I'm having to shift and, be back in the office?
Adrienne, I'm just totally relating to what you're saying. Absolutely every word, and same thing with the other women. Such a privilege to be with all of you. And what I was just thinking about as you were saying that is the phrase I've been holding lately in my mind of comparison kills. It's so much where it's like, if I see all that and I think somehow I have to be whatever that is, whatever version is put up there, either it's the mom that's doing all the home activities while my kids feel like they're ferally living downstairs, barely getting by on an online Zoom line, but that's about what I have in me at this moment in time. Or from the flip side, like, from the super worker. And I know for me, the internal journey has been that I don't want to lose is constantly going back and say, what do you need right now? What is it to be tended to? But it feels in our normal worlds outrageous to do that at some level, but to constantly be monitoring, saying, great, and not to take anyone else down for their choices, like go make your sourdough bread. I'm not making that choice, but go you, and what do I need right now? And it does feel pretty radical to choose that.
I learned pretty quickly in the pandemic that baking bread is not my ministry. I ruined a lot of bread, so and wasted a lot of flour when it was scarce. So I moved on from that. We just have a few minutes left, and so the last question I want to toss out to each of you is, what have you learned this year from female community leaders that motivates you as you look to the future?
I think for me, I'll just go back to what stood out to me the most is the level of authenticity. And that encourages me, for someone who's had to deal with imposter syndrome and, code switching and all of those things. It feels good to be in a moment where you can see that is changing or has changed, and you can be your authentic self in the spaces you choose to be. And that's very motivating and encouraging to me. And I hope that I can model that for those that are looking at me for motivation, because that's definitely been my motivation. And that's been motivating for me and life-changing for me during this time.
I would say for me, as a cisgender white woman, I've learned the most from the people who have been willing to tell me hard truths and clean my clock and, adjust. It's been the best humbling year from that perspective, and to really increasingly take responsibility for what I can affect and change. And I'm going to say, particularly for me, I've been incredibly humbled by single moms, by the everyday heroes that aren't, raised up in these platforms that have made things work. Like, I moved to tears of thinking about the resilience that I've seen demonstrated that's truly awe-inspiring, that makes me think, wow, if we can do that and we can do that together and we can get through this and things come out even better, what else is possible? But watching those values like courage and resiliency modeled in the thousand small ways has motivated me to keep going and keep stretching and figure out, what do I next need to touch or do or move?
Thank you, Barbara. That was really, that really was very touching. And I feel the same way. There are so many people in within even the work that I do who were, everyday folks who went to work every day and kept our grocery stores going, and all the healthcare workers who, put their lives on the line for us, and the healthcare workers who, passed away, take care of them, just the bravery and just leading of, in their way, their values-based life, and I also I've been really inspired by just young people also across the country who have been doing their own, rallying around their issues that are important to them, holding protests and holding campaigns and, it's just been really inspirational to me as a new mom to see them put their creativity and their sass to work and to watch them follow their moral compass in the direction that they've chosen to point it, and they're just, there's so many young women out there that I could name. But, I was thinking of, there was a young woman in Springfield, I believe, who she had organized a peaceful protest at the state capitol for racial justice. And I just remember just going into the rabbit hole of Googling about her because I was so inspired. But there's so many people out there like that.
Yeah, also on Everyday Heroes. For me, there's a group of workers that we represent that work in the direct care field with folks with severe developmental disabilities. And during the pandemic, mostly women, mostly folks of color. And during the pandemic, they often had to stay for weeks at a time at the facilities. So as to, quarantine and then keep COVID out. And so we're taking time away from their own families to help folks that were in really vulnerable situations. And their wages are basically set by the state, and they every year are arguing in Springfield for, more money just above minimum wage. They were successful this year, so that was a big deal. And I just heard their stories. I'm working with them in that, trying to get those wages raised. And it's just such incredible work, and they care so deeply, and that they sacrifice to be able to do work that they care about. So just really inspiring.
Great. Well, thanks to each of our panelists for their candor and sharing their experiences. And I'm going to turn it over to Jackie and Deborah now.
Thank you, everyone, for that interesting and insightful conversation. We really appreciate the time, talents of each of today's panel members. We're so grateful for your knowledge, and thank you for being here. And we have one final special treat for everyone. Dr. Ezike and Osili have agreed graciously to indulge us with a brief Q&A. I'm sure some of you have burning questions for everything now that things are opening. So thank you both for agreeing to do that. And so I will hand things over to Dr. Osili.
Thank you, thank you, Chicago Women in Philanthropy. I am just thrilled to be part of this conversation, inspired by your work and your mission, but also just a wonderful conversation this morning. And I am also thrilled to be able to ask my wonderful college roommate, dear friend. She's actually the godmother to our son. There are just so many ways to describe her, to bring her back for just a few quick questions. And I want to encourage all of you in the audience today to send in your questions. So we're going to start with our very first one. Dr. Ngozi Ezike, also known as Dr. Ngo Babe, that's your insider term. Hugs to you this morning. Congratulations on all your amazing work in the past 12 months, but throughout your life, really, not just today. I want to ask you one question. As all of us leave, what should we be doing to empower women? We've heard that COVID and the economic aftermath have disproportionately impacted women, set back gender equity about a generation, and female labor force participation is at its lowest rate since 1988, 55.7%. So lots of work for all of us to do, but what can you tell us in terms of a call to action? What are you doing to lift up women leaders, and what can we all do?
Well, there's so many things that CWIP can do. I know certain things, some basic things that public health, that IDPH is doing is, we're starting with things like maternal mortality that's at its very lowest level, trying to keep women of reproductive age alive, making sure that we don't see these really just heinous gaps in terms of who dies related to being pregnant and who doesn't, identifying substance abuse as a very significant threat that needs to get the appropriate attention, that more providers need to be equipped to handle substance abuse and substance abuse in pregnant people, that we identify postpartum issues that can get in the way of people, returning to the workforce or being supported. And of course, I think I caught some of the discussion about childcare. We know that is a significant issue that needs a lot of effort. And this is not a IDPH thing. This is not just a work sector thing. This is an all-in community thing on how we're going to re-envision this so that women can be as productive as they can in the workforce and make the contributions that they were destined to make.
Okay, so this is another hot area, self-care. We've heard the panel discuss it. You are passionate about women taking care of themselves. Chicago Women in Philanthropy, all of you have leaned in during this period. What can you tell us about how we can take care of ourselves? I hear your voice all the time, reminding me to exercise, eat well, make time for rest. What can you tell all of us? Because we all need that refueling and recharging after 16 months of a global pandemic.
No, definitely. And, I've had to try to play the tape back from myself. And so everyone needs a buddy to hold them accountable. At a point I was doing a good job, the things, everybody has their thing that keeps them whole and helps them to hold it together. And even with those things, we were still stretched and maybe needed additional help, i.e., professional support, counseling or therapy. And I proudly acknowledge that, I had to be in that bucket and actually am right now trying to make that available for all of my team as we try to come forth. But, whatever it is that makes you, that refills your cup, that rejuvenates you, for me, if I can start my day with, reading the Bible, prayer and meditation, things go better. If I can get those workouts in, things go better. But it is trying. I mean, real talk, like I suffered and lost time and was working literally 18, 20 hours a week and fell off on the workouts to the point that I literally gained COVID-19, like right around the midsection. And I kid you not, I went, actually I had my assistant buy me a pregnancy test. I said, I think it's a baby. And I have to be pregnant. I couldn't have just gained all this weight. And I told my sister, this is exciting, like at least one good thing to come out of this pandemic. So I was so distraught when it was like, no, this is just you, not a second life. So it really was the wake-up call. Okay, get back to the normal stuff. Get back, had a trainer come outside and we just worked outside when people, weren't in your house, just started walking outside with my husband and said, look, I am going to not even carry my phone with me. And honey, you and I are going to connect and we're going to walk. And so very simple things like helped to get things back. I have not gotten rid of all the 19 pounds, but I am getting there.
I don't believe you. You don't look like you've gained a single pound. So wait till
the height lets you hide it a little bit. The height lets you mask it. But my husband will tell you, oh yeah, he saw every one of those pounds.
Well, I have some burning questions that are coming in, and those are shifting us into another mode. We know we still have a lot of work to do to keep our communities safe and to get our economies back on track. So let's ask you to just give us our own call to action. What should we be doing to make sure that people still get vaccinated, those who haven't? What are the steps you are taking in this next mile, which is about recovery, rebuilding, but also making sure that we don't have another surge in COVID. And there's still folks out there who have not been vaccinated yet. So we'd love to hear, and there are other questions coming in. So I'm going to take them as they come.
Yeah, no, it's a ground game right now. All the people who are like, when is the vaccine coming? When am I eligible? It's my turn. I signed up, went through all the different websites, made an appointment. Like that happened. And now you have people who are, obviously not that eager. So it really is going to take each person. And my thing has been each person get 10. Somebody came to do my daughter's hair. We're getting ready for graduation. And I was like, oh, she had her mask on. I was like, you've been vaccinated? She's like, no, I plan to. I'm like, guess what? Walgreens is across the street. So before any hair was done, we headed to Walgreens and got vaccinated, right? And so it's literally like each one take 10, go find someone, keep working on them. Those personal connections will help get it done. It's not going to be a stranger on TV, the governor. People want to hear from their friends who've been vaccinated. So really getting on into that ground game and working, make your list of 10 people and make sure it's your mission to do that. And then just, continuing to remind people, and I hate to be Debbie Downer, that the pandemic's not over. And so we want no mask shaming. When I show up with a mask, people are like, uh-oh, what does she know that we don't know? But the truth is it's not over. And you don't know what people have going on. You don't know their medical history. You don't know their risk tolerance. And just as it was hard to get used to wearing the mask, maybe people have to take more time to take it off. And there are absolutely situations where it's still appropriate to wear a mask. A graduation of 1,500 people, that's a crowded situation. That is a great idea to wear a mask. And then for the kids who are not vaccinated, let's think about that there's so many of them around and how we can best protect them.
So let's listen to Dr. Ezike. I hope everyone heard each person get 10, not one, but 10. I'm taking notes. And also the pandemic is not over. There's still work to do. One last question. What is your biggest leadership lesson from 2020 and 2021? What can you tell us about how we can forge ahead in our own leadership journey?
Well, I think you all watched me learn it. I had a very public moment of being as authentic as I did not plan to be. And it ended up being broadcast internationally. I had relatives in Africa saying, "Is that you? Was that you we saw?" But I was mortified in the moment. As soon as I got off camera, I was talking to the governor. I was just apologizing profusely. And he was like, "You don't have to apologize for being a human." And so being able to just recognize that bringing your whole self and being human and expressing your humanity, I can't believe the amount of support that I got, the amount of letters from strangers that were saying, "We needed that collective cry. You did it for all of us." So being able to be true to yourself is actually a good thing. I think I heard people acknowledge that, and women, I think, probably do that better than men for the most part, and not shying away from that.
Well, Ngozi, we love your authenticity, your integrity, your courage, but most of all, we love who you are and the fact that you bring it all to the work that you do. Thank you for being a shining light and an inspiration to all of us. We're so proud of you. Keep up the great work. And I'm going to turn it back over to our Chicago Women in Philanthropy, this amazing team that organized this event. Thank you again. Dr. Ngozi.
Thank you, Professor Osili.
Wow, what a great program. Told you it was going to be great. That's an example of the programming you can expect from Chicago Women in Philanthropy. Iris, thank you again for your vision. It is because of you that this is possible. I encourage you to join CWIP. There's information in the link in the chat to let you know how to join CWIP. You can make amazing connections. I know I've been a member for 10 years and I've benefited both professionally and personally. So you become a member by linking there, or you can visit our website at cwiponline.org. And I'm going to turn it to Jackie to close it out.
Thanks, Deborah. So thank you all for coming. We want and intend for this to be not just this, but what's next for you in terms of speaking up in that meeting, going out for that walk, whatever it is that you need to do to bring more of yourself to this mission and vision of creating an equitable, inclusive, and connected social sector. So with that, we invite you to come tomorrow morning, 8 to 9. Bring your coffee, our Friday share, first Friday share. We have these every first Friday of the month. And we're going to be talking about where do you want to take this panel conversation? Where do you want to take this program? And we invite you all to come. Link will be in the chat, or go to the CWIP online website. Again, thank you so much for coming. Keep coming.
Help us move forward together.
Bye-bye, everyone.